Our first speaker today is Tony Edwards, who is the CEO of Stepchange Global. I first heard Tony speak at the online webinar, much like this one, and I was very impressed. It was this summer, the Minex event. Tony explores the digital solutions for mining and also oil and gas industry. So I'm very happy to have Tony with us to set the scene of the general digital transformation in mining before we jump into the blockchain pool. Thank you very much, Tony, for being with us today, and we're looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you very much, Tanya. It's my pleasure to be here. First of all, what I'd like to do is just give a little bit of overview on who Stepchange are and what we do. We're an independent advisory and consultancy company that really only works in the area of digital transformation and integrated operations. And we have the capabilities to do strategies, programs and pilots for oil and gas and mining assets. At the very top level, we work at the corporate level, defining the top level digital transformation strategy. And we've done that for a number of companies, including Statoil, that was, Equinor is now, and Petronas in oil and gas. But we can also do that down to the very specific asset operational level. And in many respects, that's where we're at our best. We very much work in that operational front line, and how do you get digital embedded into your day-to-day operations. One of the things we do is integrated operations center design and implementation, and I'll show you a few of the things that we've done shortly. We do operational digital technology advisory services, but we are agnostic to technology suppliers. So that way we feel we can advise our clients around what is best for them in terms of technology, based on a needs basis. We are very, very interested in streamlining process and very much collaborative enabled real-time and remote working type processes. So we see a general trend in oil and gas, in mining, to remote operations, and we're very much at the heart of that. We also like to align organizational structures around people, process, technology and governance. What we see as one of the major barriers to uptake of digital technology is the lack of organizational alignment and who does what with the technology that you spend this money on. We also take a people-centered approach to change management. How do you convince the people on the shop floor what's in it for them, and how do you get them on side with this new way of working? We have a number of health checks, so if you've got an existing integrated operations center, we can review it. And one of the other trends we've seen more recently, specifically in oil and gas, is a move towards minimum manned operations, or even unmanned operations in the case of more simpler gas production facilities. We've been fortunate enough to work with lots of great companies. We're just about to celebrate our 12th anniversary. Initially, we did a lot of work in Norway with Statoil and ConocoPhillips, and then we've also had the pleasure of working with many of the best companies in the world on this. On this graphic, you can see the ones in the red boxes are the mining companies that we've worked with, and we really jumped ship from mining, from oil and gas into mining when we were doing a lot of work in Australia, and we got recommended by the CIO of Santos to the CIO of BHP that we were a company that could help them with their new integrated remote operations center that they were designing in 2012. Our integrated operations center experience, we've designed more than 50 of these in oil and gas and mining. We now tend to see them as full office suites, collaborative suites. They are designed around your processes, your organization, your culture, and of course your building. We have a proven agile sprint-based method of designing these centers, and we do them for field locations, but we also do expert centers, etc., etc. And of course, in light of COVID, the last one we designed was actually COVID distance compliant as well. The one which was, we were in the middle of designing it in March when the COVID thing hit. I mean, what you can see here is a few of the ones that we've done. This one here shows you how we translate the processes and the organization into a layout that makes sense in your operation. This is some example of the centers that we've done. Some of them are pretty small. This one here is a company called Huntley and Huntley Exploration. They're in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. They're a startup oil and gas company currently running, 2 or 3 wells, very small. Also small assets like the Repsol shale gas asset, also in Pennsylvania. And at the other end, we've done BHP IROC in Perth, which is the one that everybody talks about. We actually designed the layout and provided some change management support for that. And then more recently in mining, we designed the Escondida Integrated Operations Center. We've done one for Tech also in Santiago, and one for Barrick Gold in San Juan. And if you want to see a really nice video, if you go to YouTube and look up Integrated Remote Operations Center and Valadero, you'll see a video of that one. So I'd really like to set the scene for the day around how digital is enabling and transforming the way mining companies are delivering day-to-day operations. So what is integrated operations, which is often the term you hear used for digital transformation in mining? It's a framework to enable you to optimize the mining business. And what you see here in yellow is a whole bunch of technologies which have been evolving over a number of years now, such as high bandwidth communications, Internet of Things, cloud storage, mobile work, analytics, robotics, automation, blockchain, of course, which is the main focus today, digital twin, drones, and integrated operation centers. And it's about how do you apply those to the day-to-day operations and maintenance and production processes, and how do you improve things like operations excellence, production excellence, how do you do reliability and maintenance, how do you do asset integrity, how do you manage energy, how do you do production optimization? All of those sorts of things are enabled by not just one of these technologies, but a whole suite of these technologies. And how do they come together to transform the way that you operate your mine? And in this case, this is a graphic from a copper mine in the Andes in Chile. But when you look at this, if you apply all these technologies to your operations, what does it mean for your operations teams on a day-to-day basis? And actually, if you walk into an office where they've already been doing some of this or into an operation, you'll see a number of things. One, you'll see that the operations support is speeded up. So the engineers and the mining specialists who are in an office and not at the mine location will be supporting the mine production systems and maintenance logistics in real time. So there's a shift towards shorter timescale working. There is undoubtedly a connection between one or more remote sites, and that could be your main production site. In many cases, it could be split sites. It could be your main mine site. It could be a rail depot. It could be a port system. It's also your back office. It could be vendor offices as well. And how do you get them to work together again in real time? We see that there's a move to a multidisciplinary way of working, and specifically a value chain integration for optimization. So how do you optimize your iron ore from the mine through the rail system to the port in the best way possible? And that's inherently multidiscipline. And how do you get these different disciplines and functions to work together in real time along the value chain to maximize that throughput? So we see a bunch of drivers and a bunch of enablers. So there's a lot of drivers around discoveries in increasingly remote locations, and that's always been the case in oil and gas and mining. There's key skill shortages. There's the increasing technical nature of many of the discoveries. Is how do you scale your business or scale your operations? Of course, we're always looking for production, performance improvement, production efficiency, operational cost base. There is an impact of higher low commodity price. In fact, both have been a driver in mining and in oil and gas. Of course, we're about safety and HSE, and really about how do we manage that entire value chain. And of course, we see the enablers are a whole bunch of technologies. But I think what we've learned off of other sectors, and specifically the defense sector, is that Some of the enablers are organizational. So what are the new supply chain management models? What are the new operational models? What are the new project concepts which fully embed digital? And what are those new organizational models for whole companies and whole organizations? You know, the value from integrated operations and digital comes from right time or real time decision making, doing things faster. It comes from that connection of more than one remote sites and including the best people in the decision making. So historically, decisions would be localized and geographical, and now you can actually involve your subject matter experts. It is about that multidisciplinary integration, and that causes issues of how we break down those organizational silos and why this is a change problem, and how do we apply that to maximizing operational uptime, upset and event recovery, and that end-to-end production optimization. Typically we see this is about 4 or 5 integration of 4 or 5 key elements for success. How do you get your people on board? How do you update and adapt your process workflows? What are the technologies that enable you to update those processes, do them faster, higher quality and remotely? And what's the organization you need to run this? And that requires change management. The one thing we've learned is, doing digital and mining and in oil and gas, it's not about the technology, it's about a digital transformation. It's about organizational transformation. If you get it right, we've seen some examples, very successful examples, like the IROC in Perth, where the payback has been 5 or 6 months on the initial investment, much faster than anticipated. And this is typical what we see in oil and gas as well. A couple of things. One is this idea of this measurement to decision life cycle. So you measure, you have an instrumentation, or you measure stuff, and that could be video analytics or whatever on the mine. You transmit that data, you store that data, and then you need to analyze that data. Now, as recently as 10 years ago, transmitting and storing the data was extremely expensive, and now it's just not the case with the advent of cloud and ubiquitous high bandwidth communications, of course. But once you've got that data, you do need to analyze it, and that's where a lot of these new technologies are coming in, like analytics and like machine learning, model-based technologies, digital twin, etc., etc. And then how do you, build your understanding to actually find an opportunity for performance improvement that then lets you make and take a decision that can actually be implemented back in the field. And so we often see that these centers are in offices in city center locations like Perth and Santiago, and the mines are 1,000 kilometers away or even more. And so how do you build that trust between the operational guys who wear hard hats and swing spanners in the field and the guys who are doing the high level analytics in the office on data which is being measured on their performance? And if you don't have that trust, it's very difficult for what we've learned is very difficult for digital implementations to actually maximize their value. Now, of course, if you unwrap that data decision lifecycle, you'll get a bunch of layers: data capture and storage, communications, visualization, analysis, work processes, collaborative working, organization and governance, change leadership, decision and action. And that broadly, boils down to 4 boxes of technology, process change, organizational change, and people change. And this is absolutely critically important. There is an 80-20 rule here. The highest value comes around from the people, organization and process change, but the highest cost is in the technology. So don't forget about the effort that you've got to put in to actually get your organization on side, to get your people on side, and to update your processes and how they're run. And of course this requires change management, and this is organizational and people change management, not technical change management. Here's an example of something we did a couple of years back for BHP in a potash mine in Canada, where they wanted us to look at the value chain, and we looked at the critical interfaces and how you optimize between those interfaces. And this is an approach that we've used and certainly seen BHP use to actually integrate that entire value chain. Another example of what we do is obviously these integrated operation centres. What are we trying to do? Bridge the gap between the office and the field. We're enabling remote control. We're trying to optimise production on the value chain. We're enabling machinery and equipment, automation, monitoring and surveillance, and that's done from one of these centres. You know, how do you integrate planning and all of that support services into a single room where you've got the control as well? You know, we try to make the centre be the first port of call for the field, so the office for support. So if the field has a problem, they go to the centre to try and get support, or hopefully the centre's anticipated that problem before it happens. And then also it's the first port of call for the office-based staff to know what's going on in the field. And basically this is what we call situational awareness, which is the people in the office having a full picture of what's going on in the field at any one time. Now, we do break this down into layers. We break this down into a control layer, a remote operations and support and control layer, and then collaborative decision making and expert support. And you know, we've seen this as a very, very strong trend to integrate these layers into a single designed operation center layout. Here's an example of one, a smaller mine project that we did. You've got a number of control desks here. You've got a production optimization area here. You've got maintenance and engineering support. You've got integrated planning. You've got breakout rooms. You've got an event room. You've got a viewing gallery, and you've got some support team. And typically, most of our layouts have all of these elements. Some are much more, some are much larger and more complicated. The one that everybody refers to is the BHP Billiton Integrated Remote Operations Centre in Perth. We were actually the company that designed this layout for them. We actually got brought in quite late in the project to do some assurance, and we convinced them that the layout that they had wasn't really going to work, and so we redesigned this layout. What you see here is mine 1, 2, 3 and 4 mines feeding a rail system, feeding a port system, and the pink guys are the intermine management team, and the mauve, these guys here, purpley guys, they're the integrated planning team. So this shows you how the work kind of flows around the center and reflects the geography. Now, unfortunately, we wanted to put the rail guys between the mine guys and the port guys, but the geometry of the layout of the floor just didn't really work very well. And again, this center paid back its value in about 5 months. So another one that we've done again for BHP, this is the Escondida Integrated Operations Center for the very, very large copper mine in Chile. I mean, this was part of the basis of design that we were handed. We turned that into this kind of design over a period of a couple of weeks. We've got a sprint approach to agile approach to developing these, and we can do them very fast. We then mocked up some pictures of what it could look like, and indeed there you can see the photographs of it actually in real life. Now, these photographs were taken when it was being commissioned about 13-14 months ago when I was there, so it doesn't look completely perfect and it's not staffed up yet, but it gives you a good idea of what it looks like. And then this is the Barrick Gold one. Again, this is a smaller one, supporting a gold mine in Argentina. This is the graphics of what we said it could look like, and this is it for real. And again, this is the one that you'll see in the YouTube video. So what are the changes that we see enabled by digital in mining or integrated operations? One, we see a move from serial work to parallel work. So a lot of work goes on simultaneously in a synchronized way. We also see a move from a functional and single discipline approach to a more multidisciplinary teams. We see work becoming independent of geography and location. We see decisions being made on data and experience and not just experience. And we see that, the way of working becomes from being reactive to proactive. So in a quick summary, IO and digital is a technology-enabled organizational transformation. It is not an IT or a technology project, but is really continuous improvement. We've absolutely learnt that very painfully over the last 15 years, that you need your operations leaders to be leading this. It is asset, company and culturally specific. So the way you do this in Australia versus the way you do this in North America or in South America is different. It needs to be culturally aligned, and it is not one size fits all. It is, there are always elements of standardization across all these centers, but all of the ones that we've done are different because your operation is unique, your organization is unique, and some people have got good buildings, some people have got not so good buildings. You need to deliver this capability, which is the integration of people, process, technology, and organizational change. It's about changing the way you work. The value is significant. We nearly always see payback in less than a year, no matter what the cost. And some of these implementations can cost, a few $100,000. Some of them can cost many tens of millions of dollars. But the one thing they have in common is you get payback in a pretty short space of time. IOC are where the technology comes together, and it's the visible change in the way of working. It's where people make decisions. So conclusions, the vision of a new way of working that we see is beginning to be realized in many companies. It's probably a little bit more common in oil and gas than is mining, but certainly we're seeing, it's not just the big companies like Rio and BHP with deep pockets that are doing this. It's a lot of other companies, and certainly in oil and gas we're seeing very, very small companies. Basically digital isn't an option anymore. It's a must-have, and we see that there's significant proven value in production efficiency, uptime improvement, improved safety. It's about distributed collaborative real-time working. The technology and analytics is an enabler, but you need to focus on the people and process and the technology as a way to being successful. It is culturally and organizationally specific, and I think it's the way that all mines will be run in the future. We're just in a transition period now. That transition period, 15 years ago when I started this in oil and gas, we thought we'd be finished 10 years ago, and that hasn't happened, and that's primarily due to the organizational people and cultural barriers which there are involved in undertaking these kind of transformations. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Tony. That's a fantastic, very high energy presentation. I think a lot of our guests will find it very relevant to their projects. I for myself, certainly 3 highlights is, yes, oil and gas, we need to learn from them. They've done a lot, and we have a lot in common as the industries. I always think of them as a big brother. Also very glad to hear that your approach also works for small scale companies. And also definitely this highlight that the change management has to happen at the organizational level. We need to convince people, and I think this is what this conference is largely also all about. We are talking a lot about philosophy, of well, specifically blockchain here, but in general, like digital technologies. We need to bring people on board, and mining is a bit slower moving, but it is definitely moving. So I think we're on the right track. So thank you very much for that